I'm in the bus bays at Royal York Station, but if I'd been standing here when this station first opened, I would be in TTC Fare Zone 2. That's right, the TTC used to have zoned fares. They're long gone, but there are still some relics of them around the system. So let's go and explore. And later in the video, I'll have a fun fact for you about the name of this station.
Zoned fares for transit systems aren't uncommon. For instance, the London Underground extends over 9 fare zones, mostly based on concentric rings around the downtown core. Here in the Toronto area, GO Transit also uses fare zones, though most riders probably aren't aware of them because you just tap on and off with your Presto card and the system magically calculates the fare. But your fare isn't calculated between 2 stations, it's calculated between the fare zones those stations are in. So, for instance, Union and Exhibition are both in Fare Zone 2, so the fare between either one of those and somewhere else is the same. And while Up Express doesn't exactly use fare zones, the fare does depend on how far you travel. But back to the TTC. It used to have flat fares within the old pre-amalgamation city of Toronto, but when Metropolitan Toronto was created in 1954 and the TTC became the transit agency for all of Metro, it was felt that using a single fare zone over such a greatly expanded area wouldn't work, so 5 concentric fare zones were set up. But by the time I'm talking about in this video, it had been reduced to 2 zones, with Zone 1 basically covering the city of Toronto and Zone 2 covering everything else. Now, I'm not talking about the city of Toronto as we know it today. That only came about in 1998 due to a provincially mandated amalgamation. The original city of Toronto, formed in 1834 to replace the town of York, was much smaller, even if you include the areas called the Liberties, which were outside the city proper, but under city control. Since then, the city has grown through dozens of annexations and amalgamations. Here's the city on March 30th, 1954, the opening day of the city's first subway line. The subway stayed well within the city, so it was all in Zone 1. Moving forward to 1963, the city had grown a bit, and so did the subway, with an extension up University Avenue, but still very much in Zone 1. 3 years later, in 1966, the first phase of the Bloor-Danforth subway opened, from Keele to Woodbine, all within Zone 1, although Woodbine was just barely on this side of the boundary. Fast forward 2 more years to 1968, and while the city expanded a bit, the second phase of the Bloor-Danforth line extended to Islington in the west and Warden in the east, both well outside the city of Toronto, and therefore outside Zone 1. It wouldn't be practical to try to collect extra fares from passengers as trains crossed a line on the map, so the decision was made that the entire subway would be part of Zone 1. But that caused a problem at stations like Royal York. If the subway platforms are in Zone 1, but the bus bays are in Zone 2, well, as the Offspring sang, "You gotta keep them separated." But not too separated because passengers need to be able to get between them. And if you've ever looked at the concourse level at Royal York and thought, this seems too big, well, that's because there was a gate line down the middle. The bus bays were outside the fare paid area, which isn't a problem because buses can collect fares. Here's a view looking the other way from the base of the stairs toward the subway, and passengers still had indoor access between the platforms and the bus bays because the concourse had stairs and escalators to both. Islington had a similar setup, but as it's undergoing a lot of construction, I couldn't get any photos to match with old ones. But a major reason for that construction is the replacement of the old bus terminal. Here's the view today looking from the station concourse down the bus terminal concourse, and the reverse view back in the day. If you look closely at the doors at the far end of the old photo, you'll see fare gates just beyond them. Just like at Royal York, there was a gate line separating the subway from the buses. This old bus terminal is being replaced because, as this photo shows, it's not accessible. Speaking of replacing inaccessible bus terminals, let's visit Warden, another of the stations with a zone problem. That's where the original inaccessible bus terminal used to be, and it's also being replaced. And as we zoom out, have a look at the old photo. Through the glass of the collector booth on the right, you can just see the stairs to the old bus terminal. And of course, there's a gate line extending the whole way, unlike today. And in the background, you can just see a second collector booth, which turned into an unusual feature because it was retained even after the gate line went away. Here it is today. It had been an information booth, though it seems it's now just a fancy storage closet. Warden's bus terminal, of course, was famous for its Jamaican patties. Only time will tell if they return when the new terminal opens. Victoria Park also used to have an inaccessible bus terminal, but that was replaced over a decade ago, and the transformation of that section of the concourse makes it almost unrecognizable. Back in Etobicoke, 2 other stations had the zone problem, but solved it differently. Old Mill was located beyond Zone 1, but didn't have enough buses to justify a bus terminal, so there's just a bus loop in front of the main entrance. And Jane, which was just inside Zone 1, has bus bays beside a long, narrow entrance building, which didn't have room for collector booths and a gate line, so they were placed below ground and have stayed there. So, just like Old Mill, the buses are outside the fare paid area, which is why it requires a transfer to get between the subway and the buses. It wasn't just stations outside Zone 1 that had to deal with this, though. If you thought that Main Street Station's concourse was too big, well, that's why. It had enough bus routes to justify off-street bus bays and a streetcar loop, yet it's close enough to the border that buses heading north almost immediately went into Zone 2, so its concourse also had a gate line. Main Street has a surprising position in the streetcar system. I talked about that in my video about the geographic extremities of the streetcar system. There's a magic link on screen, and I'll put one down in the description so you can find it when you've finished watching this video. In 1973, long after Metro Toronto assumed responsibility for the TTC, with the young subway about to extend beyond Zone 1 to York Mills and then as far as Finch the following year, the decision was made that zone fares were more trouble than they were worth, so they were abolished.
Now, I hear one of you, you know if it's you, saying, "But Steve, Kipling and Kennedy are even farther from the core, so weren't they in Zone 2? No, because those 2 stations didn't open until 1980, several years after zone fares were eliminated. Now, for that fun fact I promised you about the name of this station. Even though the Royal York Hotel is way downtown and this is out in Etobicoke, this station was indirectly named after the hotel. You see, when the hotel was first being built, they made arrangements to build a golf course in Etobicoke, north of here, along what was then called Church Street, because they wanted to be able to offer privileged access to their customers to a golf club. That golf club opened in 1929 under the name the Royal York Golf Club. In the 1940s, it was renamed to St. George's. Church Street was renamed to Royal York Road because it went past the golf club. And of course, the station was named for the road. So the station got its name from the road, which got its name from the golf club, which got its name from the hotel. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. Please like and subscribe.